Hi, I'm Jill from June Taylor with another innovative solution. Did you ever want to join your quilt blocks that are made Quilt As You Go? Now we have a perfect way to do that with our Sash and a Dash. It's pre-sewn sashing. It's sold by the yard in 7 colors with matching binding. Open the casing and nest your quilt block inside the casing. And then we're just going to run a top stitch down the edge. Take your next block, open the casing, and just do the same thing. To join rows, we're going to do the same thing, only we're going to run our Sash and a Dash across the row. You can run a beautiful embroidery stitch down here to embellish Sash and a Dash, or you can even put a strip of fabric down here. Here's an example where we added a fabric strip by folding under raw edges and top stitching over Sash and a Dash. And if you like to make t-shirt quilts, go ahead and quilt your blocks and then join them with Sash and a Dash. Get ready for fall with an AccuQuilt block on board or bob die that's really something to quack about. The Go Duck Creek Puzzle 10-inch finished die. This fun classic block is a great twist on a square and a square design that presents a fresh, modern look. The Go Duck Creek Puzzle die is designed to cut an entire 4-color block in just one pass through any Go fabric cutter, including the Go Me. Don't puzzle over joining up these perfect points. The screen printed letters and specialized dog ears make this complicated looking block simple to cut and easy to sew together. Combine it with other 10-inch bob dies or Go cube sets for even more design possibilities. Let your imagination soar as you plan project after project like throw quilts, table runners, wall hangings, and more. There's no tricky puzzle to solve because this die is from AccuQuilt, where we help you cut time so you can quilt more. Hey quilters, in today's show, Chris is going to show us how to cut and sew his signature trucker hat die. Hey quilters, welcome to AccuQuilt Live. I'm Pam Heller, AccuQuilt's cutting expert. Thanks for joining us today. Chris is in the house. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm so happy. Because in today's show, Chris is going to be on the big screen, and I'm going to sit here and answer questions and sit in the box. I'm super excited about it. But before we get to that, what are you working on? What's new?
Well, I'm making a hat today, so that's going to be fun. And then
I'm so glad you're making a hat today. Okay.
Yep, and I've been trying to focus on my community quilt, which you can see some of the blocks up there.
They're behind you.
So that's going to be my project for probably now until the end of the year.
Okay. Cool. Cool, cool. And I'm liking your shirt. In a minute, you'll tell us about it, right?
Yes.
Okay. I love it. Okay, here's the photo of the day. So road trip, since we're doing trucker hat dies, homage to all of my brothers who were long haul truckers. Here is the question of the day. So what is the longest road trip you've ever taken? So here in the studio, Greg, you went from Omaha where?
Reading.
Oh, Redding, California. Okay. Chelsea went from Omaha to Vegas. She did not take her cute baby. It will make that road trip 4 times longer the minute she drives somewhere with a child. And Kenyon went to like Texas, LA to Kearney, which is, and then Kearney to Baton Rouge. And I went from Seattle to Disneyland when I was a child, sitting backwards in my parents' station wagon. So I feel like I went. So in the comments today, tell us what's the longest road trip you've been on. And today I'm going to give away one of our Go Trucker hat dies. This die is designed by our very own Chris Marchini. Be sure and register for future events on the AccuQuilt event page for your chance to win. And I am going to announce the winner of our registered viewer at the end of the show. Okay, so Chris, here's what we're going to do. Look, I have a chair and a laptop and a
all comfy
cold
today.
beverage and a phone. Oh, we didn't tell where people were from. Listen, those of you who live in Seattle, there was a cyclone, a bomb cyclone, so we're glad you made it through that. Tammy is from Lebanon, Missouri. Someone said it snowed in Michigan. Oh, we know. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I get to be Chris today, and Chris gets to be me. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch the cameras out. Kenyon has all how to do this. There you go. Okay. There's Chris. So Chris is going to take us step by step. We're going to talk about the die. We're going to talk about what it goes through. And then Chris is going to go step by step. So if you have questions, I'm the person that gets to answer that. Okay. All right, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you, bud.
All right. Well, first let's go through what you need to make your trucker hat. So for the outside, for the hat itself, the fabrics you'll need a fat quarter or a quarter yard for your outside shell and another one for your lining. And if you want your front panel to be a contrasting fabric or like an orphan quilt block, you'll need that as well. And this starts as a 10 by 10 square.
Okay.
As far as like interfacings you'll need, I use the June Taylor t-shirt project interfacing. It's a woven, like light, medium weight interfacing, and I've gotten the best results using this. So that is the one I use. You will also need some foam stabilizer. So this is like 1/8 of an inch, just foam used for bag making. I prefer the kind that has one fusible side, so I can just fuse down my fabric and then quilt it. It doesn't have to be fusible, but that's what I use. And then for the brim, I have been using Pellon Peltex. It's like a stiff It almost feels like felt, but a bit stiffer. In the instructions, it'll have you using one layer of this. That's kind of where I recommend you start. And then depending on your machine, if it's a little more heavy duty, you can try 2 layers of this, which I recently did and really liked the results because the brim was a bit stiffer. So there's that. And then you'll also need about 3 inches of 5/8 inch wide Velcro. And that's for the back closure. Alrighty, let's put all this aside. I have very limited space today. So I've already gone and quilted up the front panel, and I'm using this print. I forget the name of the line. It might be Goblin Core by Ray Ritchie. And Ray Ritchie is actually the artist who designed my shirt as well. So I wore it to kind of coordinate a little bit. All right, let's put that aside. I'll switch my camera up here. There we go. So here we have the trucker hat die. It has all of the shapes you need to make the trucker hat. This is our front panel, side, back. This is the brim lining, and then this is the fabric for the brim. So this is on a 10 by 24 inch die board. It will fit through the Go and the Go Big. I will be using my Go cutter today. And you can use a 10 by 24 inch mat, or I prefer to cut the pieces out individually just so I can make sure, you know, everything's exactly where I want it to be as far as prints, designs, whatever. So I like to use a 10 by 10 mat to just cover the piece I'll be cutting. So this would cover the front panel. It covers both of the side panels perfectly. And then when you get to cut the brim, it covers that as well. So just a little tip there. First, we're going to cut out our front panel, and I'm going to cut it out of that pre-quilted fabric. So this is just one layer of fabric fused onto that foam stabilizer. If you need to put a backing fabric, if you have like a double-sided foam, it will cut all of that as well, but just cut one layer of your quilted front panel. And I like to try and line up the quilting when I cut it out. So I'll fold along kind of where those intersect and put that down the middle. We have you start with a 10-inch square, even though that is oversized for the piece, but that gives you the opportunity to fussy cut. So if you need to move it around slightly, you can do that. If you have a design, or it also saves you because as you quilt, if you quilt really densely, your fabric's going to shrink up a bit. So you don't want to end up with a piece too small when you go to cut it. So we'll add our mat, stand up to do the cutting. So today I'm just using the Go cutter and have enough space to set up my Go Big. Alrighty, and now while I'm cutting this pan, do we have any questions or any road trips happening?
Oh my gosh, so many people have been on road trips. I'm loving it. Okay, so first of all, Mary Lynn, she had the True Love road trip. She went from North Carolina to California. And a lot of people went from, Robin went from South Carolina to Oregon. Let's see, Amy went from Florida to Cincinnati. This one, Carol, she's went a long way. She went from Southern California to British Columbia, Canada. So that's
all up the West Coast.
All up the West Coast. Michigan to Florida, Diane went. Actually, one of the longest road trips I ever took was across Iowa because I had children and it was pouring down rain and we couldn't stop. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get through Iowa. Sue drove from Boston, Massachusetts to Phoenix back in 1975. So, gosh, without seatbelts, maybe even. Annette went from Dallas, Texas to Destin, Florida. Oh, I do love Destin, Sugar White Beaches. All right. Oh, here's another one from Washington to Edmond, Alberta, Canada.
Oh.
Which is
fun.
Amazing. Okay, now Joanna gets extra points because she drove from Massachusetts to California, and every night they camped in a tent.
Oh, goodness.
There are hotels. I'm just saying. Except one night in Illinois where there was a tornado and they stayed in a motel. So I think that's hilarious. So lots of people. Oh, Diana went to Nevada for to the Sturgis motorcycle rally up in South Dakota, which is kind of fun. Oh, and a lot of people went on Route 66, right, California. Nice. Oh, okay. And then before we send it back to you, Janet went 3,400 miles round trip from Dallas, Texas to Long Island, New York.
Oh, wow. That is a long trip.
That is a long trip. Okay, so Chris, we don't have any questions because you're doing such a great job. Keep going.
Awesome. So we have our front panel cut out. Awesome. And the die has these notches right here.
Yes.
And those are important for us to line everything up as we go. So there's no need to do any markings. My original paper pattern, you have to like make little dots on the backside to get everything lined up. But with the die, that's all built in for you. So it's a very good time saver. All right, let's move on to the side and back panels. And for these, you will want to pre-fuse the interfacing onto your fabric. So this is the fabric I've chosen. I thought it looked like snail slime that they leave behind. So I thought that would be fun to pair with it. So I have my fusible interfacing on the backside, and I folded it right sides together, and I did press it. When I fold, I like to press just so everything's neat. And then we are going to line it up here. Now we do have grain lines on the die, and I will say if you are using a print, the print supersedes the grain. Once you've put that fusible interfacing on, your grain kind of goes out the window because it's interfaced. But I do use this to make sure that I get it straight. So I'll just line it up and make sure I cover the entire shape. And the packaging for the die has all of the rough cut dimensions you'll need to get everything cut out. Just get that one lined up as well. Make sure my shape is fully covered. Then I'll use that 10 by 10 mat. Cut this piece out, or these pieces out. I have barely enough space right here for this. Right, give that a little rub and slide it off. And now we have our two side panels. Oh, got a little selvage showing there. And our two back panels. It's a little bit off on that one, but that is okay. So we'll set those aside. And now we're going to cut out the brim pieces. So for the brim, in your two fat quarters, there is enough fabric to do it, but I like to do, it's kind of a little peekaboo. I didn't do it on that hat. But what I'll do is on the underside of the brim, I'll have it match the front panel. I think it's just fun because then when I look up, I can see it, kind of remember which hat I'm wearing. But you don't have to. So you can use any fabric, and you could even make this completely out of scraps. If you just have random fabrics that are the size of each panel, that's really fun to do as well. So I have one of my snail print and one of the slime print, and I'll just put them right sides together because we will be sewing them right sides together. And then I will cut out shape D, just making sure I have that fully covered. Added my mat. Bring my cutter back. Give it a little rub and slide that off. So now I have my brim fabric. I already pre-made my lining, but you would just cut all of these pieces out, well, minus the brim. You would cut the front, the sides, and the back out of uninterfaced fabric to make your lining. But I did that just so we would have enough time today. So the last thing I need to cut is that interfacing for the brim. So that's where I'll pull out my Pellon Peltex. I've also made a hat using Pellon Decoville. I used 2 layers of that and it seemed to work pretty well. When I was developing the original pattern, I wanted to make sure that whatever product I recommended was something that was easily accessible and that could be sewn with any home sewing machine.
Oh, very
So whether
good.
you have like a heavy duty semi-industrial like I do, or you have just the off-the-shelf beginner model from the store, I wanted to make sure everyone would be successful in making their own hat. So that's why I've gone with like the Peltex. Okay, that's the last thing to cut, so I'm gonna put that down here. Give that a little rub. And there is the brim lining. Don't need that. Alrighty, so let's put this down. That's all extra. And I think we are ready to start sewing.
Okay.
While I get my machine over here, any questions?
Yes, we have 2.
Okay.
Hey, and just a shout out to Lauren, who always does our chat moderation. Lauren is one of my favorite humans. She just is always so cheery. So she's sending all these great, where everybody's traveled to, and has some great questions. So Robin wants to know, my pieces always shift. Any pointers to keep it steady? And I think one of your pointers, Chris, is that you use a smaller mat, because sometimes if I use my 10 by 24 mat, and if I don't have it right there and then I put that big mat on, sometimes it shifts. Do you have any other pointers to keep it steady?
If you are going to use a big mat, I would start by feeding the end that has your fabric on it first. So let's say I was cutting out the front panel.
Right.
So I have my fabric here, and I put on the 10 by 24 mat.
Right.
Which I have right here. I would start with this end going through the machine first, because that's where my fabric is.
Right.
If you start here, there we go. Start here, the pressure from the rollers, because it's on that foam, like it could slightly shift by the time it gets down to where your fabric is.
I do like the thought of just using a smaller mat though, because that kind of thinks it. Okay, and then Kay wants to know, are there instructions with the die? And I'm going to tell you they are available for download from the product page, but did you make a little video?
Yes, I made a video with Erica. That's also on the product page and on the AccuQuilt YouTube.
Yes.
The instructions are too lengthy to all fit on the packaging, so we do have the cutting instructions on the packaging, but the sewing instructions, you would need to go get one of the free downloads. There's quite a few of them.
And 2 quick questions. Yeah, I was gone. I was triathleting while you were hanging out with Erica. Sherry wants to know, Decoville light or heavy?
I used the heavy.
Okay. And Susan says, I'd love to wear these hats down here, but I don't like such a high front. Is there a way to make it fit closer to my head?
So there is one of the pattern instructions is for a teen/small adult or even a child. Okay. And by using a different seam allowance when you create the crown of the hat, you can shrink it down a bit.
Okay, good. And Ray's in our chat. Thanks for helping, Ray. Okay, Chris.
Hi, Ray.
All right, Chris, go. Go sew.
All right, let's switch to my sewing machine camera. Hopefully it's right side up this time. Yay. All right. So the first thing we are going to do is sew the brim. So here's my brim piece. And we're going to sew from the point on this side around the outside curve and end at the point on the other side. And that's a perfect 1/4 inch seam. My machine can get a little picky with those points, so I usually start in a little bit, then backstitch. That's another thing when you're making the hat, you will want to backstitch all of your seams because we'll be turning it right side out, inside out, upside down. All those seams are going to get quite a bit of tugging on them. All right, so now we have our seam. You can kind of see it there. And now we're going to head back over to our ironing station, which is this camera. So with whatever side you want as your top side, so what's going to face the sky, we want that up, which I'm going to do the slime print here. And now I'm going to take that interfacing, the ultra firm stabilizer, and I want to line it up right with that stitching line. And since this is all, I mean, a lot of this seam is on a bias, it gets a little distorted when you sew it. So you can just kind of fiddle with it a little bit so that the seam is right at the edge of the stabilizer. And then what I like to do is just with a really hot iron, kind of tack it down. If you want to use a pressing cloth, I would recommend that. I just don't have one handy. But the manufacturer's instructions for the Peltex is I should be pressing from the fabric side. But this way I can tack it down so that when I flip it over to iron from the fabric side, it stays where I want it.
Ah, there you go.
Another tip when using these interfacings, and Pam, you can plug your ears, but steam helps a lot.
Our relationship is over, Chris. I can no longer be your friend. No, it does actually.
So now that it's tacked in place, I can go to the back side and give it a good press, a good steam to get it all tacked down. And then once it's all fused, you're going to want to wait a minute and let it cool down a bit. Because if it's still warm when you try to flip this right side out, the glue will just come undone. I've done that more times than I care to admit. All right, so we've got that all in and we're gonna just flip it right side out. If you want, you can clip these corners, but with a 1/4 inch and those being on the bias, I have not found it necessary personally. And anytime I can skip a step, I will.
Oh, yeah.
There. So that's going to be our brim. And before I head back to the machine, what I will do is make sure my raw edge here is lined up. So you might have to tug a little bit. We want it really tight around that interfacing. And then just give it a good pressing. It's nice and flat. There we go. One reason I really love using the die for this versus cutting by hand is this outside curve. If you have like little bumps and it's a little jagged on your interfacing, it will be visible in your finished product.
Oh, sure.
So the die has a nice smooth curve and it just makes it so easy. All right, let's head back over to the sewing machine. First thing we're going to do is a quick basting stitch on that raw edge just to keep all of our layers together. And you'll want that to be less than 1/4 inch. So it could be, 3/16, it could be 1/8, just something that's less than 1/4 inch.
So you don't see it on the other side, right?
Right. And if your machine can do like a narrow zigzag, that helps also. My machine is straight stitch only.
So is mine.
What machine do you have?
I have a brother,
Okay.
and it's, I don't know, 25 years old. It's great. Just does a straight stitch.
All right, so we've got that all tacked in place. Now we're going to do our top stitching. Probably not a good example to show, but I usually just do 3 rows of stitching.
Oh, sure,
and I'll
right there.
start from the edge, and I'll just do either 1/2 inch or 5/8, whatever the machine marking has. Mine is 5/8, so that's where I'm going to start. And then just a 1/4 inch in from there and a 1/4 inch in from there. You can do more, you can do less, whatever you want, because it's decorative, but it's also going to keep that underside from kind of sagging when you're wearing the hat.
Okay. Okay, while you sew that, Sherry wants to know, can you cut 2 layers of the Peltex?
You can. I don't know if I would recommend it, especially with the Go Big. It did not like that.
Yeah, I just do 1 layer at a time. But that was a great question. And forever that will be known as snail slime. we should tell him. We should say, hey, listen, by the way, we renamed. Okay, somebody wants to know, I love this because quilters are so inquisitive. What is the white stripe with the markings on Chris's machine?
This here?
Yeah.
This is diagonal seam tape by Cluck Cluck Sew.
Okay.
And I highly recommend it.
And it allows you to just do a 1/4 inch?
Yep, so you line the red line up with your needle, and then it's a perfect 1/4 inch on either side.
The things people have. That's what it is. Sue wanted to know, and now we know. Okay, and so many of you, while Chris is sewing his things, so many of you have been to so many places. Oh, here, I want to read this one because I thought this was cute. Angela said she went on a road trip with her daughter this past July, and they drove to Vicksburg, Mississippi to pick up a daughter and a granddaughter, and then to Little Rock and picked up another daughter and her husband and his son. I feel like she just traveled around picking up people. I think that's fabulous. And then they drove to Livingston, Montana, and then back to Louisiana, which is cuckoo. Patty did a road trip with her daughter who was stationed in Seattle, and they drove to Mississippi and Louisiana and New Mexico and all the places. And they stopped in New Orleans, the Grand Canyon, Las Vegas, Sacramento, Biloxi. So I'm just loving all of the fact that you've traveled all over the world, folks. This is terrific. Maine to Florida. Oh, Kansas City to Alaska. Depending on where you went in Alaska, that was probably a really long drive, Sue. Holy smokes. And somebody went from Alberta, Canada to New Brunswick. So I have been to most of the Canadian provinces, but I have not been to New Brunswick. Have you, Chris?
I have not.
Okay.
I think I've been to British Columbia and Ontario. I think that's it.
Oh, yeah. I was in, showed up on my Facebook just yesterday. I was, however many years ago, I was in Alberta, Canada, and it was 58 below zero was the temperature, not the wind chill. And I was there doing an event, and I went to this great quilt shop, and they said, okay, Pam, just leave your car on. I go, what? And they go, no, otherwise it'll freeze, it won't start, so just leave your car on. So I did, and I came back to the hotel, and the water pipes had burst in the hotel because it was so cold.
Oh, no.
It was crazy. It was crazy. Okay, talk about slime. Look at how cool that is.
There we go. So the brim is ready to go, so I'm going to set that aside for now.
Okay, what are you sewing next?
Next, we are going to start on the actual outer shell of the hat.
Okay.
So for that, we're starting with the front panel, and this is the one that has the foam stabilizer. We're going to fold it in half, and this seam right here, that's the front dart. So we're going to sew a 1/4 inch, and I recommend starting from the fold side.
Yes.
That way you don't get a little bump right there when you're done. So we'll just fold that in half. And we're doing some back stitching and then just sew a 1/4 inch. And that's going to be the front of the hat.
Oh my gosh.
Now we do want this seam to be pressed open. It gets really bulky with that foam. So I'll say just if you can get the first inch or so here to lay open, you'll be fine. If the rest of this doesn't want to cooperate, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Give that a real quick press off camera. There we go. And now what we're going to do is we're going to attach the panel to the right-hand side when you're looking at it. So we have our double notches right here. So I need to find the side panel piece where the double notches will line up.
Okay.
Put those right sides together. And I do use a couple clips here when sewing the interfaced fabric to the foam fabric, because that foam fabric, it's thicker and it's squishy, so it's easy to get off. Oh, I'm going to flip these around. And I like to sew from the bottom edge towards the tip. So I'll have this piece down on the feed dogs and the foam side up.
Oh, that makes sense.
We're going to sew 1/4 inch around. Little back stitching.
I too am squishy and thick. Despite going to the gym.
And now we have our side panel attached. And if you want to press this seam towards the side panel. It wants to go that way anyway because of the foam, but you can help it along. Oftentimes I don't press at this stage. The instructions have you pressing at this stage, but I will fully admit I don't.
Okay, and while you're doing that, Sue, who asked about what your, that tape, the white strip, Sue has already ordered her diagonal seam tape from Cluck Cluck Sew as we have been on the show.
Wonderful. It is really good stuff. And it's a whole roll. Like, it's going to last you forever. I need to replace mine.
Yeah.
But it's like a 10-meter roll of washi tape. So, like,
I might have
one
to get
roll is
that
going to
for
last
the
you a long
lovely
time.
Erica for Christmas.
Yes.
Okay.
A wonderful stocking stuffer for your sewing friends.
Okay.
Okay. So now that we have the side panel attached, we're going to set this aside. We're not attaching the other side panel to the front.
Okay.
Now we're going to move on to the back of the hat. So on the back piece, there are these 2 notches. For the outer shell, we're going to ignore them, other than using them to line up. We're just going to sew 1/4 inch from tip to arc right there.
Oh, while you're doing that, Melanie wants to know, why aren't you using a walking foot? And you are. It's built into your machine, right?
I actually don't have a walking foot. This is just a 1/4 inch foot.
Oh.
I'll use a walking foot for quilting the front panel, but my walking foot, like, I lose my 1/4 inch. It's, yeah, so I don't like using it, but for this, you totally could use a walking foot if you have good markings on it.
Melanie, that was a good question.
All right, so we have our seam here, and this seam we want to press open. You can press it with your iron, or I like to just finger press it. It usually holds pretty well. If you're having trouble pressing because it's a curve and it's not like flat where you can just put it down on your pressing surface, a tailor's ham or a rolled up towel will be your friend.
Okay, I had never heard of a tailor's ham, and one of our viewers a few weeks ago sent me a package, and it's a tailor's ham. It's over at my desk, and she knows who she is, and I want to thank her because I had never seen one before. But now I know what it's for. It's to put those seams down because they're on a curve. And she, yes, it was her mother's. And
Aww.
I know, while you're sewing, I'm going to go find it. So I can give her a shout out, because it was amazing that she had sent that to us. Well, to me.
That's so fun.
Okay, so now you're putting these pieces together.
Yep, so we have it pressed open, and we're going to top stitch about 1/8 of an inch from that seam from the front. And what that's going to do is tack that seam allowance in place.
And are you
Now
going to do it on both sides, Chris?
On both sides, yes. My foot has a little 1/8 inch marking on this side. If you don't have that, you can just eyeball it. Just, try to keep it straight as possible,
Okay.
if possible. But if not, it's fine too.
Okay. I have to read you. This is, while Chris is sewing, Amelia from Portland. Listen, if you live in the Portland area, you need to go see Chris whenever he's doing live events. Amelia went from Portland to Indiana to Ohio to Illinois to Wyoming to Seattle and back home on a Greyhound bus.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, back in 1978, where people, I bet, could smoke on buses. Holy smokes. Okay, look at that.
There we go. So now the seam allowance is all tacked down, and it really helps with your finished hat to make it look super professional.
That looks great.
And now we're going to take that other side panel and attach it again to the right-hand side, and we'll line up those single notches. And hopefully my selvage there will get caught in the seam allowance. Again, I like to sew from the bottom edge, so I just flip it over. Couple back stitches. And a 1/4 inch seam.
Chris, what happens if it kind of gets all bunched up?
All bunched up.
Obviously, it's never happened to you. But sometimes if you're sewing curves, sometimes they get bunched up. So I have a tendency to just stop, right? And lift up your...
Sure.
Yeah.
So sewing these curves is different than sewing like curves in a quilt block because these curves are the same.
Ah, gotcha.
So you're not like having to twist one to meet like a convex and a concave curve. We will get to that though when we attach the brim.
The brim is phenomenal. Just wait till we get to the brim.
All right, now here is our back half. We have the back that we created and the side panel, and then the front and the side panel.
Okay.
We need to attach both of these together, and we want to line up this point right here. It's kind of hard to see because it's black, but we have our center dart seam and then the side seam. So it comes to a point right there. And this point right here.
Oh, yes, you can see it. Yes.
Yep, we want to line those up as best we can.
Okay.
Grab a pin.
Erica would be proud.
What I like to do is from the front side, we're going to put a pin so it comes right out at that peak. Maybe. There we go. So we have our pin sticking out, and then use that same pin to go down right at the peak here. And then I'll use some clips to hold it in place and take the pin out before I start sewing. Then again, just a 1/4 inch all the way around. Some hats I've done really good getting the peaks lined up, others not so much. They're fine either way. I've had a couple people put like a button on the top just for fun to cover up that center area.
And while you're doing it, Carrie wants to know, does the hat cut a certain size or can it be adjustable? So it does cut for a standard adult head, but the strap in the back, Chris is going to show you, can make it smaller or bigger. But like Chris said, we also have, if you have a smaller head, one for a teen and for a child. You just make them smaller.
It's the same die, it's just different seam allowance.
So Jonna wants to know, I bet I said your name wrong. How hard is it to embroider on the front of the hat?
So if you want to embroider, I would suggest doing it before you cut it out. So it's a flat piece of fabric, super easy to embroider.
Oh, there you go. There you go. And Sue, she loves using pins. Could she use clips? And the answer is, of course. But pins
Yes.
kind of allow you to line that up a little bit better.
Yeah. So now is the part that's always hard to show on camera. But
Okay.
what I'm going to do is tack these seams down as well.
Okay.
So I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch, not a 1/4 inch, excuse me, 1/8 of an inch. And when I get to the center, I'm not going to pivot. I'm going to keep sewing straight.
Okay. We'll watch.
I'll show you that when I get to the center.
Hey, quilters, don't forget this video, like all of our live events, are recorded. You can come back and watch Chris sew hats for days.
Right, I'm at the center. So
Okay.
instinctually, you'd probably want to pivot to
Right.
continue on the front side, but we're not. We're going to continue straight. So now we're sewing between the side panel and the back panel.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So there's one, and now we're going to do the same thing with the other seam.
And Chris, is there a reason you didn't start on the other side? You didn't just, I'd have flipped around and started the other side, but you don't care.
It's because my 1/8 inch guide
Oh.
is on this side,
Gotcha.
so I like to use it.
Okay. Snail slime.
And when you're in the center, go slow. There's a whole lot of layers happening,
So
and you don't want to
much
break a
bulk.
needle.
So much bulk. Yeah, that's a good point, to just slow down.
All right. So we've essentially sewn an X across the top of the hat, and now the crown of the hat is done.
Excellent. All right, let's
All right.
talk about where people have been while you're getting ready for the next step. So first of all, listen, I have my own hat ham. Look at how fun that is. It came in the mail. I did not know what it was. This is from Carolyn B., and she said, Pam, this was my mother's sewing ham. She was an amazing seamstress. She made all of the girls' clothes growing up, and she made her own as well. She even drafted her own patterns. She loved quilting and belonged to her local guild. She would have loved the AccuQuilt system. I hope you use it to make lots of hats. Thank you, Miss Carolyn. Yes, now that I know what to do with it, I was like, yes, we can put that right there so we know where it goes. I love it.
That's so sweet.
Okay, let's see, Shelley, she and her husband travel quite a bit. Their most loved trip was with her sister and her. She rode in the back of her parents' truck from Independence, Kansas to Spokane, Washington. Of course, the truck had a camper shell in the back. Gosh, you could have had like s'mores and stuff in the back, seatbelt, all of those things. And Nanette went from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to Chicago, got a train to DC for Christmas when her brother was in the Marine Corps. All right, let's see. Margaret wants to know, is the seam open? Yes. We're
seam?
opening those seams as you're doing that 1/8 of an inch.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, on the X part that I just sewed, no, those are just to the side.
Okay,
And the instructions tell you which ones are open, which ones are to the side.
excellent. Tava wants to know, what size needle are you using?
So I like to use a 16.
Okay.
So like a denim needle, something a little more heavy duty. I would
Yes.
say at least a 14. I would not recommend like a 10 or a 12.
Oh, no, those are for quilting. And then Robin says she has a Juki. Can you tell me the foot so she can purchase one?
This actually isn't a Juki foot. I believe it's a Janome foot, and it's the 1/4 inch piecing foot.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, what's
All right,
next,
so
Chris?
we're
I'm
gonna
loving
make the straps.
watching you work. It's one of my favorite things.
I've already made one of the straps.
Okay.
So there's not a shape on the die board for the strap. We're going to cut it 1 1/4 by 7 1/2. So you can use the 1 1/4 strip die. But it did not fit on the die board. And you can also use alternate things for the straps. So we just omitted it. So we're going to fold this in half widthwise.
Okay.
So our fold is right here, and then just sew 1/4 inch on each side, remembering to backstitch.
Okay.
And now I like to just give those a little bit of a clip on the corners. This is the fold side. And to turn it right side out, easiest way I have found. What's that?
Do you use chopsticks?
A chopstick, yes.
That's
Because you
what
want
I
something
use.
super skinny. But if you pull the two sides and like make a dent in the fold,
Okay.
that gives you somewhere to start the chopstick.
Okay. Chopsticks,
And
not
then
just for Chinese food.
Right? And then just work your way down.
Excellent.
In class, I've seen some people try to start at the opening and like work it in that way. And it's just so skinny that doesn't really work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, speaking of
No.
class, you're going to AccuQuilts next year.
I'm going
year.
to AccuQuilts next month, actually.
Next month. If you live in
Yes.
Northern California, go see Chris. Are you teaching a
right.
trucker hat?
I am. I'm teaching a trucker hat class. I'm also going to be working at their holiday event for their AccuQuilt booth.
Oh, give those people a hug for me and Erica. We love AccuQuilts. We were there like last year.
Awesome. All right, so I've just pressed that flat, and now I'm going to add on my Velcro.
Okay.
So I just kind of stitch around, nice and easy.
I wish I'd invented Velcro. And sticky
You'd be
notes.
so rich right now.
I know, right?
All right, so now we've got our Velcro on, and we are ready to put all the pieces together.
Excellent.
And we are
And our time
hopefully
is great,
going to have
Chris.
enough time.
You're doing great. No, you're doing just great. Don't forget, if you have questions for Chris, put them in our chat.
All right, so here, let me switch to my overhead. That might be easier to show this part.
Look at him. Has an
Move my
overhead.
iron out of the way so I don't burn myself. All right, so we need to attach the brim to the front panel. Whichever side of the brim is going to be facing up, you want touching the front panel. And we're going to use those notches in the center to line them up. So line those up, put a clip in it. See, I do it this way. So brim side, I like to sew down. So I'll put the back side of the clip there. And then you are going to use a lot of clips.
20.
20 clips is usually what I use. So only worry about a 1/2 inch at a time because that's the width of the clip. Clip it and then line up the raw edges of the next 1/2 inch and clip it. And just keep working your way from the center towards the edge.
And this is super important, quilters.
This is going to save you a lot of seam ripping.
Okay.
It is also going to make sure that your brim is centered so you don't look lopsided when you go out in public.
Oh, there you go. Or you need to fix your hair or something. Okay, while you're doing that, Haley wants to know what kind of machine you're using. He's using a Juki?
Yep,
And
it's a Juki TL2010Q.
Oh, there you go. And
Whole lot of letters.
Jenna wants to know, could you use elastic instead of Velcro?
You can. The instructions for assembly will be a little different because we're going to stick those in and sew them down. But if it's a solid piece, then you would want to put it in later.
Yeah.
So I'll show you that when I get to it.
Carrie wants to know, she has a Go Me. Does she need a bigger cutter? She does. This die will fit through the Go or the Go Big. Hey, right now, AccuQuilt is having huge Black Friday sales on their website. Check it out. It's not even anywhere near Black Friday. We've already started because we just want everybody to have what they want for the holidays.
I've noticed that with a lot of companies doing like super early Black Fridays.
Yes. What's one thing on your Christmas list, Chris?
Oh gosh, I am the worst person to shop for Christmas because when I see something I want, I just go buy it.
You are the worst. Stop doing that. Okay, look, 20 clips.
Yep. And there are 2 little notches on the bottom edge right here. And that is to help you make sure that your brim is centered. Ideally, the tip of the brim should end right at that notch, but if it doesn't, that's okay. Just make sure that it's even on both sides.
Okay.
Now we're gonna sew this down with a 1/4-inch seam. And this is really a basting seam. So if it's not perfect, it's okay. Just make sure it's a 1/4 inch or less.
Okay, and Ray, who's always there to help me out, says, right now, if you're looking to get the Go Big, it is $115 off.
Oh, wow.
On the
That's a
website.
good
And
deal.
while you're getting a Go Big, get you a Go Big die catcher. Catch it
Yes.
on the other side.
So
Okay.
one tip I will give for this part is don't try to start right at the edge of the brim where that clip is. Start a couple inches back so you can get a few stitches in.
Oh, it's like a
gonna hold
running
everything
start.
still. Exactly. And then just remove the clip. And you're going to be sewing about a 1/2 inch at a time.
Okay.
Removing the clips as you go.
That's so pretty. Rosalind says, I have a large head. How do you adjust for larger heads?
So I am still trying to figure that out. This, my head is 24.5 inches around.
Okay.
And it fits me with a little room to spare, so I can go up a little bit. But to make it larger, we need to add, figure out how to add a piece.
A piece or a panel or something. And Chris has no hair. So that's why he has a little wiggle room. Right?
Exactly.
But I can always find Chris in a room. So, okay, look at that, quilters.
So brim is attached. This is that part where I was talking about, you know, you're adding a concave curve to a straight seam. So I do, before I move on, go back and check, just make sure I caught everything. I can see some of my basting stitches, but that's okay.
Right.
Because the final seam will be 3/8 of an inch, so that will get caught.
Okay.
But you just want to make sure everything is caught. It's all good. You don't have any like puckers, bumps, anything like that. So this looks good.
Okay, we have a couple of questions before you move on. So Noreen wants to know, I tried to embroider a design on a store-bought hat. Oh my goodness, and did not go well. So this die is going to work great because yes, like Chris said, you want to embroider it first and then cut the pieces so that you can make the hat. So that's great. Sherry wants to know, the seam you just did, was it pressed open or to the side? I think it's to the side.
So this seam that I just did to attach the brim, I haven't pressed it at all yet because it's not quite done.
Oh, okay. So wait, Sherry, it will happen. And then Noreen wants to know, what did you use? Oh, to make it stiff in the brim. What's that called again?
Yep. This is Pellon Peltex. I have a single layer in here.
Okay.
I recently made a hat with 2 layers and it was a lot stiffer. So I will probably start to do that from now on.
Okay.
You can also use Pellon Decoville, the heavyweight stuff. I used 2 layers of that in a hat. It worked out really well. So those are a couple options. I've heard people say Craftex, but I have not tried it myself yet.
Okay, good deal. All right, we're gonna let Chris get back to sewing the middle.
So we're gonna leave our hat in this state so it looks like it's ready to wear, but it's not. And we are going to take our lining piece, which I already made. It's all the same as making the outer shell, except you're going to leave the gap between the 2 notches on the back seam open.
Mind the
You're
gap.
also not gonna do any of the top stitching because it's on the inside and no one's gonna see that.
Right.
But we're gonna turn that inside out. And then starting from that center point on the brim, we're again going to use a whole bunch of clips and get it clipped in place. This is the hardest part of making the hat.
Okay. So just take a breath.
To prepare you for that. Yeah, take a breath. It's all good. But I'll start in the center, and then you want to line up all of your side seams. And the reason this part is hard is because that brim is going to fight you.
Yeah.
We can get this one clipped and I'll kind of show you. Because it's between the 2 layers and it's pushing out on the lining. So it can get a little awkward. So that's why you want to use lots of clips. You don't need to use quite as many as the last seam we did.
Okay.
But use as many as you're comfortable with. just to get that all in place and right where you want it to be. And then as I'm sewing, I'll just go really slow. What will happen is this lining wants to fold itself up, and you can accidentally catch that in your seam.
Okay.
So as I'm sewing, I'll just give the lining a gentle tug just to make sure it's flat and not in the way, because this is going to be on the underside towards my feed dogs.
Oh,
so I'll just
yes. Okay, I
go
gotcha.
slow, keep peeking underneath.
Okay. And
After
we're gonna watch this, Chris, because this is important. And again, quilters, don't forget, this is recorded.
Yep.
So if when you get your trucker hat die, get it from your local AccuQuilt retailer or from us online. You just come back and watch this video with Chris.
Yep.
I got to spend some time at festival with you, and you showed me how to do it. And I was super excited that you were going to show it here on the show.
Yes. All right, this seam is going to be sewn at 3/8 of an inch.
Okay.
So something to note, it's a little bit bigger. I just start at one end. I have the lining on the underside towards the feed dogs.
Okay.
And just take your time, go little by little. And I'll show you here when we get to the brim what I do. All right, we just started on the brim. So what I'll do is I'll lift this up and peek underneath. You can see that fold right here. Like I'm well aware or well away from where my seam will be, but I will just give it a little tug just so it's flat.
Okay.
Then sew about an inch or so. And then just keep peeking underneath and adjusting as needed. So this is the hardest part, but it's not impossible.
Right.
And it's
You
not
just have to take it
super
slow.
difficult. Exactly. And I like to tell people this is the hardest part because the whole thing looks really difficult.
Yeah, it's
but
not
after
at
you've
all.
made one and kind of got your preferred technique under your belt, you'll be making hats for everyone for Christmas.
For days. I start the
Hats
minute you
for
get
days.
this. Yeah, it's just fabulous. And look at you pulling those bindy clips out like a pro. While you're doing that, Kathy wants to know, can you make a vented hat? Could you use mesh in one of the sections?
Yes.
Yes.
So I actually made one with like trucker hat mesh for
Okay.
the back panels. And so I did not do a lining on that one.
That was
'cause
my
would
question.
defeat the purpose. But I used some bias tape to finish those seams.
Oh, there you go.
Eventually, I will write down the instructions for it.
Kathy,
I've just
that
been
was a
busy.
great question. Thank you. Okay.
All right, we have our seam all the way
Oh
around the
my
bottom,
gosh.
done. So now what I'll do before I move on, pretty much at every step before I move on, I just check my work.
Yes,
I want to make
always.
sure that I didn't catch the lining, which I didn't. It all looks flat, there's no puckers. And then from that opening, I can kind of peek inside to make sure I don't have any exposed stitching, there's no
right.
raw edges.
Right.
All looks good.
Okay.
We are almost done, believe it or not.
No worries.
Now we're going to take our straps.
Okay.
Just here, the controls are in my way. I can't see what I'm doing.
Okay.
So one side is like the pokey loop side
Yes.
or hook side, and one is the soft loop side.
Okay.
I like to take the pokey side and have it touching the outside of the hat. Because then when it's right side out, it's going to be facing away from your head.
Oh, right,
So
right.
that way it doesn't like scratch your head, especially right next to that stitching line. Like just push it as far as it'll go. And you want it to stick out about 1/4 inch because that will help with the longevity of your hat.
Sure.
We'll just put a clip to hold that in place.
Sure.
And then on the other side, the loop side, we want facing the lining of the hat so that
Right.
they're opposite. Same thing, we'll insert it, have it stick out 1/4 inch and just push it right up against that stitching line. A clip in that. And then I like to line up the center seam here
Okay.
and put a clip there just to make sure everything stays. And now we'll sew this with 1/4 inch.
Okay.
I'll also backstitch, oops, I came unthreaded, but I will backstitch over where the strap is
Okay.
so that it's extra reinforced.
Okay. Live TV, man. You don't get that at home.
I'm just glad my threader worked the first time.
Or that you didn't run out of bobbin thread, or, I mean, so many things.
I double checked the bobbin before we started.
Oh, good job. Good job.
I've started using pre-wound bobbins, and let me tell you, I love them.
Okay, oh, they're the best. You can find them on the AccuQuilt website. We have them all the time. Great for stocking stuffers. Also, okay, so quilters, Chris and I have been chatting for a while, but in less than an hour, he's made this whole trucker hat.
Yep,
Super
we are
cute.
almost done.
Yeah, you're fine.
So we're going to turn it right side out through that opening in the lining. And
Okay.
what I always suggest is reach in and grab one of the ends of the brim. So one of the skinny ends where it comes to a point.
Oh, right.
Pull that out, and then the rest of the brim will follow. If you try to start from the center, it's just too bulky and it doesn't want to come through.
Oh, Marcia wants to know, could you make fabric ties instead of Velcro ties, and then you could tie a bow tie? Yes.
Absolutely.
Your ties can be whatever you want. There's no
and
trucker hat, please.
Right. And my favorite part here, you can just pull on those and it pulls your corner out for you.
Look
so
at
you don't have to reach in and poke
that.
it. I absolutely love it.
Look at that.
All right, so now we're
It's
gonna,
like you've made a couple.
right? We're gonna sew that opening in the lining shut. So I'll just tuck in those raw edges.
Do you press it, Chris, or do you just tuck it in and go?
I just tuck it in and go.
Okay.
It's in the lining, so it doesn't have to be super pretty. Get that in. All right, and then the very last thing is a seam along the bottom edge.
Okay.
So I do recommend that you press this, but for
Okay.
time's sake, I'm just gonna wing it.
Oh, go for it.
Do
wing
as I
it.
say, not as I do.
Yeah, right?
Along the bottom edge, we're gonna do a 1/4 inch all the way around.
Okay. And who's this hat for, Chris, that you've made? This snail trail?
Probably myself, I don't know yet.
Okay.
I have so many hats, it's like my hat stack has gotten a little out of control.
Out of control there. That's okay.
When you get to the brim, go slow because you have a lot of layers. And again, make sure that lining is nice and flat.
Okay.
But just reach underneath, make sure it's not bunched. And if your brim gets a little wrinkled, it's fine.
Oh, no one's asked, how do we wash them? In the dishwasher.
Yes, you can use like a hat. They have like a hat form for the dishwasher to wash hats. Technically, I believe this is machine washable, but I have not done that yet.
Okay.
But all the components are machine washable, so I would assume it would
Run them
survive.
in your dishwasher. Jill from our team has baseball players. She knows those things.
All right, and now when we get to that back arch, we're gonna tack this down or do a top stitch at 1/8 of an inch around.
Oh, just a tiny little one.
Yeah.
Okay. You could use your hat hem to press that down.
Yes. Whoops. Broke my needle.
Sharon wants to know, does it have a ponytail hole? Yes, it does.
It can, yes.
Yes.
So,
put your little ponytail through it.
Oh, yes. You can put your ponytail through that arch there.
Yeah.
Belle Bruner of, oh, I just forgot her name. It's So Pretty Things?
No, Belle Bruner of, what is she? Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, she did one where she actually left this slit open in the back and like top stitch it all together pretty so you could put a high ponytail through that back seam.
Oh.
So I think she did that probably close to a year ago, but if you go on her Instagram, she's got a picture of that. All right, let's go to my front camera.
Lauren will tell me who Belle Bruner is with. Seems so me. Thanks, Ray.
Seems so me, thank you. So now what I like to do is steam the brim and then use, like this is a 40-ounce water bottle, something about this diameter.
Okay.
to help shape it. So we're going to use lots and lots of steam. Get that Peltex nice and heated up.
Chelsea, can I?
It makes it
work
very
the window?
pliable. And then just hold it around something cylindrical while it cools.
Oh, you could use a rubber band.
You could, yeah, it doesn't take that long to cool.
I wanted to see you wear it. Super excited about
I'm going
this.
to.
I'm going to. You made
So
a hat.
see, that gives it a little bit more
it gives
shape.
it a little brim. Okay.
Yeah. And with using the 2 layers, it holds its shape even better. So I think that's what I'm going to start doing. But there we go. And another cool thing, as you wear this, because it's not like cardboard inside, if you have to wash it, you can just repress it. I'm actually, looks like I'm a little crooked here.
There you go.
But I can just re-steam it, repress it as many times as I need.
It's fabulous.
And there we go. We got a finished hat.
I love it. Terrific. All right, Mr. Kenyon, can I be on here? Oh, Chris, thank you so much for this great tutorial. I know that our viewers are going to love it. Hey, before we get closed, we're going to give away one of Chris's Go Trucker hat dies to a lucky viewer. Drum roll, please. It is Patty W. of Sparta, Michigan. Congratulations. All right, listen, if you're looking for some new things, this is the Go Duck Creek puzzle die. It is the November die to try. So this month, you can get it from AccuQuilt or from your local AccuQuilt retailer. And Chris, real quick, because not only did you make a trucker hat die, you made a binding die.
I helped make the scrappy binding die. Yep.
Yeah, and this
and
is
I made
Chris's,
that quilt.
This is Chris's quilt, and it has a scrappy binding. So we have the new flange binding and the new scrappy binding dies. You can pick them up from us as well. What's the name of this pattern, Chris? Because it's beautiful.
I think it is a strippy cross.
Yes, there we go. All right, quilters, thanks for joining us here in the Dream Studio. Well, first of all, a huge shout out to Lauren and to Ray for helping me in the comments. Here in the Dream Studio, we have Greg and Chelsea and Kenyon. I'm Pam and Chris. We will see you next week. Have a good day. Thanks so much for watching. To learn more about your quilting craft, be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for live events every Tuesday and Wednesday. You can check out the events page on the AccuQuilt website for more details on upcoming shows. And if you're looking for even more inspiration, visit our blog for exclusive tutorials filled with tips and tricks. And remember, at AccuQuilt, we help you cut time so you can quilt more. Hey, join Eric and I on Tuesday, December 3rd as we launch the December Die to Try. And be sure to join us for next week's AccuQuilt Live as we get ready for the holidays with a quick and easy pot holder project.